the most votes ever received by a presidential candidate to a man who cannot sell a book and now has up to $815,000 of debt. Yeah, okay. Now, look, my friends, I'm going to start off by saying something bold. I think Donald Trump won the election in 2020. I'm going to pause so that Media Matters can write up fake news and lies about what I actually believe. What I mean to say is that Donald Trump made an argument. I'm the better president, and people believed him, and that was correct. But Joe Biden won the election in the technical sense by collecting more votes, as that is all that matters. Democrats with strategy and ballot harvesting and the basement strategy were able to get Biden over that mark. Universal mail-in voting, baby. What I mean to say, and to clarify for context, now that Media Matters and other outlets have already taken me out of context, my point is that if you put Trump against Biden and said, what's your pitch? What's your pitch? The people choose Donald Trump. But if you say, none of that matters, we just need to get people to fill out mail-in ballots that showed up at their house, Biden wins. Here's more proof. Look, I know everybody's already seen, ain't nobody shown up to Biden rallies. Trump has 100,000 people in Wildwood, New Jersey. Take a look at this story. President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden are carrying a personal debt of up to it's nearly $1 million, $850,000. Their records show no one is buying the president's books. Most of the couple's debts are in the debt is in the mortgage of their Delaware home, an equity loan on that home. Additionally, their debt consists of a term loan about $15,000 and a loan against their mutual fund for $50K. In total, the Bidens reported assets between roughly $1 million and $2.6 million and liabilities between roughly $350 and $850, according to an Office of Government Ethics form that lists ranges rather than precise figures. The Bidens' financial records, along with those of Kamala Harris and her husband, are required to be made public annually under the Ethics in Government Act, which was introduced to prevent any conflicts of interest. In his form, President Biden reveals he has had no royalties from his two books, Promises to Keep and Promise Me Dad, this year. Oh, it's just so sad. You know, I was watching this video about the life of Joe Biden, and there are these clips, really old footage of a smiling young, like 30-year-old Joe Biden, and it was talking about him getting a job and his family and the things he went through, and it's so sad. It's wild, really, if you think about it. You know, growing up, to me, Joe Biden is as old as he has ever been, right? And I don't mean that literally, but I was talking to this pro skateboarder guy who's in his 50s, and he was like, you know, I mentioned like, I'm 38, I'm an old man. And he's like, oh, dude, I wish I was 38. He's like, bro, I'm like 50, whatever, you know? And then I was like, dude, you are as old as you have ever been to me. Like, I'm 13 and you're like 20 something and I'm watching your skate videos and now you're 50. Like, you're as old as you've ever been to me. You know what I mean? Like, when I was a little kid, Joe Biden was an old man. Joe Biden is still an old man. The reason I bring this up is it's crazy to think about what were the hopes and dreams of a young Joe Biden. You know what I think? I think Joe Biden was probably this kid growing up, born in PA, growing up in Delaware with a vision. I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. To win the elections is my test, or to run in elections is my test. To win them is my cause. And then one day, he learned from his dad, his family, what it means to be a Biden, to be a scumbag, lying con man. Just like his kid, who learned from him. He reminds me of Chris Cuomo, emerging from his basement, pretending to be in quarantine as his son watches. What lesson will that child take with him? And that's what I think about. Like that kid, Cuomo's kid, might be a good kid. And he watches his dad being a lying scumbag. And he thinks this is what it means to be a man. To take whatever you want, to lie, cheat, and steal. My, how the U.S. has fallen. So I look at these stories about Joe Biden and I'm like, do you think that like a 16-year-old Joe Biden would look at old Joe Biden and think good things about him? I don't think so. And then old Joe Biden is going to be like, you don't know what life is really like. You know, when I was this age and that age, I did what I had to do. It's a question people often ask. What would your 16-year-old version say about yourself? I got to be honest. Most 16-year-old versions of all of us were dumb as a box of rocks and as arrogant to match. Well, I don't know. Are rocks arrogant? Whatever. You get my point. I like to believe that if I visited the 16-year-old version of myself and I was like, behold, young Tim Pool, it is I, you, from the future, 22 years. If I said, in 22 years, you will be talking news and politics, recording what's called a podcast, and making videos on YouTube, skating. You'd have 2 private skate parks in a big warehouse. My 16-year-old version would probably be like, okay. Like I when I was a kid, my friends skating, I was always the one who was like, I'm 16 years old, and I was talking about Bush and Cheney and stuff like that. And they knew. They were like, this guy just talks about this stuff all the time. Like, here I am, just like kind of doing the exact same thing. I think a younger version of me would just be like, you're boring. Like, you are exactly what I expect to be. There was no great mishap, no calamity. It's just, we get there. I'm not trying to humble brag or anything like that. What I mean to say is, for most of you watching, I imagine it's the exact same. The 16-year-old version of yourself would probably be like, oh, wow, cool. Had a family, got a job, kind of what I expected to happen. That's what I saw when I was a teenager. It's what I worked on and what I thought was going to happen. Some of you, maybe you're like, no way. Never would have seen it coming. That's true, too. I feel like for someone like Joe Biden, the younger version of himself would probably throw up in his mouth a little bit and be like, after everything, this is what we are? Sad. Look at these kids. So anyway, Jill Biden reported no royalties for her memoir, Where the Light Enters, but did note she received royalties of up to $1,000 for 2 children's books. Don't forget God Bless Our Troops and Joey, the story of Joe Biden. The First Lady is another children's book coming out in July, blah, blah, blah. Biden's liabilities include a mortgage on his personal home carrying a balance between $250K to $500K. The interest rate for the mortgage, which Biden incurred from the TD Bank, is 3.375. It's not bad considering. The president took out a home equity loan in 2022 with variable interest rate. Whoa! Really? Yikes. 10-year term, which rose to 100 to 250, blah, blah, blah. He also reported having less cash in the bank than he did in the past year. One of his bank accounts showed cash total of $50K to $100K from $250 to $500 last year. Yay, we get it. We get it. They got big debts. Harris, meanwhile, disclosed Beyonce gave her tickets to her 2023 concert in D.C. She valued tickets at $1,600. She and Emhoff also revealed that ESPN had gifted her tickets to Howard University's football game, blah, blah, blah. We get it. Biden reported no gifts in his disclosure. No gifts. The president has up to $815,000 in debt. That's amazing. I kind of feel bad. Nobody wants to read his book. Nobody cares who he is. And dare I say, the most popular president in American history. I think people would be wise not to run away with these ridiculous conspiracy theories of mass fraud. The idea of voting systems, flipping votes, hackers, and all of this crazy shenanigans. Because they don't need it. They needed only the shadow campaign, which you can read in full detail on time.com. They returned to the scene of the crime and explained in full detail exactly how Joe Biden won. Ballot harvesting. Ballot harvesting. It should be apparent to everybody this guy's not popular. It was apparent to everybody in 2020 he wasn't popular. And now I think young people are witnessing what it means to have been lied to by the media. Something's got to give. It's got to change. If in 2024, the system is still predicated upon who can get the most number of signed pieces of paper, as opposed to who can win the argument, we are screwed. Young people are pissed. Biden's losing support from minority voting blocs. If Biden pulls off a victory with ballot harvesting again or other nonsense, these court cases against Trump, I feel like the actual learned individuals who are suffering under this failed economy are going to lose their minds. Because at a certain point, when you look at the failures of this guy, Joe Biden, his debts, his inability, he's a president, he can't sell a book. That's nuts. That's why I should have looked up the numbers of how many books Obama sold. People are just going to be like, nah, no way, dude. We don't believe it anymore. And I think it's plain to see how they win, how they game the system. But eventually, and right now, many people just don't believe it. Even though I can show you the shadow campaign, explain ballot harvesting. James O'Keefe uncovered ballot harvesting. People can be like, nope, don't care, don't believe it. He didn't win. And then what happens to this country? How will they follow this government that is sending billions overseas to these foreign countries when they don't even believe the government's real? I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.